Hi, welcome, and thank you for watching this third episode of our Software and Digital Platforms Top Trends video series. These videos are a series of discussions with industry experts that shed light on current trends that are shaping the future of software and digital platforms. I'm Rob Lawrence. I'm an account technology strategist for Microsoft in the Software and Digital Platforms business unit. And my guest today is Maribel Lopez. She's the founder of Lopez Research and the Data for Betterment Foundation. Lopez Research is a market research and strategy consulting firm covering topics that range from artificial intelligence to hybrid work transformation. She's frequently quoted by major media publications, and she's the author of the John Wiley & Sons book, Right Time Experiences. She's also a contributor to Forbes and host of several podcasts. Welcome, Maribel.
Hey, I'm really excited to be here and having this discussion with you, Rob.
Yeah, and it really is the topic du jour. I am talking AI all day, every day with customers right now. Since ChatGPT really started catching on November and December, it's just been heating up continuously. So glad you're on to talk to us today. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is our customers in AI, and what I've observed is our customers' biggest challenge with AI is determining where and when to apply it. So what are some methods that companies should use to help find and vet strong AI business ideas?
I guess when I think about this, I think about it in a broader context that, one of the things that we have to think about is we're not trying to replicate what we had in the past. There's an opportunity to do something new. And I know a lot of the organizations we deal with are talking about, how do we create better efficiencies with technology? And they use that to prove in the value of the technology. However, it doesn't take companies to the next level. So when we see companies really thinking holistically about how to adopt AI, they're really in more of an ideating framework. They're looking at art of the possible workshops, design thinking, just trying to figure out what they could do that would be really fundamentally different now that they have AI. So the other thing that we see important in that is one thing to be doing workshops, but you have to have the right people in the room. So you've got to really pull together the IT and line of business executives and say, what are the problems we're trying to solve? What are our key KPIs? And how do we think AI is going to push that forward? So you're really defining what would make sense. So it's not just a technology problem. It's not just a business unit problem. It's those two groups coming together to figure out what could be the new workflows, the new processes, the AI enhanced things that would differentiate the business. So cross-functional teams are also important in addition to having sort of a more ideation mindset.
To combine a couple of things we were talking about first and the things we were talking about just now,
Yeah.
When companies fail to create competitive advantage with the new technology, what are the mistakes they're making? Is it in some of the initial ideation, who they bring to the table? What are the success factors, and what are the factors that lead to not succeeding?
So one of the things I think is interesting, and this is a mistake we continually keep making, it's whether or not we're trying to think about creating these platforms or trying to do something specific. So I'd say the first mistake that people make is not really understanding what they're trying to do, but they're trying to pull in a lot of technologies. And it's very difficult for you to put the right technologies without understanding what you're trying to do. And oftentimes it's not a technology problem, it's really more of a business problem. So that's the first mistake. But since we're talking about technology, we can kind of say, okay, that's more of a process mistake. Some of the things that we see happen in technology, it's like, well, I've got a hammer, so everything must be a nail. And it's like, well, no, we have the opportunity now with where different technologies could be located, how they could be purchased in more SaaS style cycles or other things to try to map the right technologies to the right problem. But maybe the biggest issue that everybody struggles with is data. Do they have enough of it? Do they know where it is? Is it clean data, dirty data? Do they know how to do data at scale? Data is still a real challenge in a lot of different ways. So everybody has a slightly different data problem, but everybody has a data problem. I think one of the things that was interesting when I saw some of the early ChatGPT demos for people and the mashup of those demos with corporate data was simply just helping people find and access a bunch of different data resources so that they could make an intelligent decision. And it just really speaks to the challenge of the data problem and the challenge of data silos that still exist. So I think we have that challenge that we have to get over. You just mentioned, preparing the data for the machine learning pipeline. We're talking to a lot of organizations about creating more consistent way of looking at machine learning, like a life cycle similar to what they did with software and the SDLC model. Basically looking at the whole cycle of the practices of pulling in the data, doing the design and development, seeing the output of that, and going back and checking and modifying and testing and making it better, right? So this is in the data world now, we're calling this ML ops. And basically, we're trying to automate the entire machine learning pipeline from data prep to training, deployment, and monitoring.
I wanted to come back to this question of ML ops and, the best AI-based solutions, they learn continuously and they evolve continuously. And of course, we've already had this trend in software towards, DevOps, where development and operations are fused. There's shorter release cycles. It's done continuously. People may build every day, et cetera. It seems that AI and machine learning are going to raise the bar for those practices yet again, and already have. So what are some of the key processes that businesses are going to need to master or are already in the process of mastering to excel in this area?
Well, okay, we've talked a lot about data and putting in the right data, but okay, let's say we've got the data problem solved. I think exactly what you said about actually moving into machine learning ops. People say that we're going to do ML ops, but it's not like ML ops is widely deployed. It is, when you look at it, it is a life cycle. So you've done your data preparation, you're going in, you're doing your model training, you're deploying that, you're testing it, you're monitoring it, you're saying, okay, this did or didn't act the way I wanted it to. What do I need to do to fix this? Do I need to create synthetic data to train the model in a different way? Do I need to go out and get new sources of data? Do I need to change what my original goal was with what I'm trying to learn?
What are companies doing in terms of preparing themselves for, say, ethics and governance around AI? Are you seeing, what are some of the smarter measures you're seeing? And then what are some of the blind spots you think people have?
Yeah, so one of the first things I see people do is, they don't know there's an issue until they've tried to create a model and they run it. But if they've tried to create a model and they run it, then they're starting to look for specific things like, did this have bias? Has, some of the things that you can do ahead of time in models are looking at things like, were there historical changes? So for example, if you look at laws have changed tremendously over the course of the years. But if you're actually building a model based on historical data, you have to really think, is that the right historical data? Would you put it in that way or would you put it in another way? So we're seeing people take a lot of time and energy at the front to say, okay, we think we put in the highest quality data possible, even though it might not be a vast corpus of data, but the highest quality, most representative data, and data that represents the world we want it to represent, which sometimes you don't have all of that information and data. So you have to think about data augmentation at the beginning of the model. So that's one thing I would say, is just trying to get the model as bias-free as you can at the beginning. And then in that process of the machine learning lifecycle, part of that monitoring is understanding if you are actually meeting those criteria. And, these things come up a lot in areas like if people decide they want to use AI and human resources to read resumes. Well, you might not have, you might need to really be very specific about making sure you've eliminated biases around things like where the person is located, or even things that say, okay, we're only scoring for these 5 criteria in the model. You have to decide that, let the AI say, oh, they have this type of skill set that might be really good for this, and just be a little more interpretive in that way. So those are some of the things that we're seeing on that side. We talked about data. So you have missing data, inaccurate data, your historical data isn't good. You definitely have to think about the data estate. you have to think about when and where you're going to check to see how the model's performing. So that's sort of more an ethics state.
It's almost like there's three big spheres of discussion that all seem linked. So one is the ethical, one is security, right? And another one just kind of occurs to me having this discussion is legal. And we just have the fact that governments and legislatures, they really tend to lag technology and tend to be chasing it because they find it hard to keep up, right? I mean, to give a simple example, like people weren't even charging tax for internet purchases until pretty deep into the internet era. How do you recommend that businesses start acquiring the skills that they need to build AI services or even just consume what's available in a responsible and effective way?
You ask hard questions.
Oh,
That's a very hard question to answer.
thanks, I think.
Well, I guess I would say the first point is you need to understand that you're just not going to go out and hire the AI talent that you desire. It either doesn't exist or it is, very expensive or it's all been taken by another company. So if you can't hire the AI talent you need to really start evaluating what your strategic technology vendors are offering in terms of embedded AI in their applications and services, AI toolkits that you can use, educational programs that you can leverage for free or at low cost. So what I've discovered is that there's a lot available from the major technology vendors in terms of helping you along your AI journey, but it really means that there's no substitute for upskilling a portion of your existing staff. So I talk to a lot of organizations about, hey, one of the things we need to look at is look at your estate of technical staff, see who has the willingness and the desire to learn new skill sets, and then try to create programs for that. And that might mean that you need to get secondary educational software or other things, send them off for training. I think that there's always the fear with the career path that if you give someone those skills, that they will leave and go somewhere else. But that also means that you have to be, in my mind, part of ethics for businesses in general is making sure that people are compensated appropriately for the job they're doing. And if they are, they typically will not leave. So you might need to actually reconsider some of the payment structures you have for certain roles. But it's a really good opportunity.
That's a great advice. And well, thank you for meeting with me today and having this conversation. It was really outstanding. I mean, like I said, I'm living the AI conversation day after day. I'm sure you are as well. And we really appreciate your expertise and your insights.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited about the opportunities ahead for all of us.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be adventure and it's going to be full of surprises. So I'm really looking forward to it as well. For the audience, if you're interested in hearing more perspectives from our top trends in software and digital platforms, look for more upcoming videos. And we hope you enjoyed this one. And everyone have a great day. Thanks very much.